Hi, welcome to the Sales Strategies for Christian Coaches podcast. I'm Justin Janowski, your host, and I started my first Christian coaching business in 2012, got one client before going out of business. 3 years later in 2015, I tried again. I had 3 clients and went out of business. 3 years after that, at the end of 2018, I launched Faith to Influence and did over $250,000 in revenue the first year. For me, a big part of the difference between those first 2 failed attempts and tremendous success this third time was that I found the right mentors between the second and third attempt. And I learned a lot, and I developed my skill sets and my strategies. And that's what this podcast is about. It's about helping you develop the skill sets and strategies of high integrity sales, marketing, and business growth for your solopreneurship. And for many of you, that's the case. That's the situation you're in. For some of you, you have teams and you're growing a business. Fantastic. We're going to help make all of that a little bit easier for you. And today I want to talk about facilitation as a coach. And I want to remind you, and many of you who are listening to this love group programs and communities, and you want to run a group program, or you want to run live events or retreats, or you're going to run a webinar at some point. You're going to be facilitating in groups or leading groups. Some of you are listening to this and you're just a one-on-one coach, in which case I'm sure that you're going to capture some of the lessons from this and bring it to the one-on-one conversations that you have as well. But what I want to share here is the power in group settings of asking great questions. And the interesting thing is, you don't have to always be teaching. You don't have to have a lot of interesting things to say. You simply need to ask a few of the right questions and get the right people together, and magic can happen. The Holy Spirit can move and lives can be changed. Transformation can happen in a moment. And oftentimes at our retreats or on our group calls, we experience just that. And the interesting thing is the kinds of questions that we ask are usually really simple. I'll tell you, we held a retreat this last week in Orlando for some of our clients. It was a sales mastery retreat. It was all focused on how to run a sales call, how to get your mind right about sales and the sales process. And we worked on that for a couple of days. We role played, and it was a really amazing experience. And it was incredible because we had so many of the right people there. And I know that makes a big difference, is attracting the right people, which begins with your mission statement and knowing who your ideal client is and speaking directly to that kind of person. And it also begins with you developing your character in such a way that you would attract the kinds of people that you want to work with. These are things that we can do to get the right people in the room. But what I want to talk about is how powerful simple questions can be. And for us, there was a moment early on in the retreat where I asked, who are you? And why are you really here? And those questions, so simple, who are you? And why are you really here? Opened up a tremendous opportunity for transformation, deep connection. There were tears shed in that conversation. And they might sound like the simplest questions because they are. Now, that said, the way that this opens up into a breakthrough is when we begin a retreat, a conference, an event experience with an opening heart story as leaders. If you're the leader, you're the facilitator. If you begin with an opening heart story that shares some of your vulnerability, that vulnerability makes it safe for other people to share theirs. And so we need to begin with an opening heart story that has some vulnerability, probably has some of the hero's journey, but helps people understand that you're just like them. You're dealing with, or you have dealt with, some of the exact same challenges that your clients and prospects are dealing with now. So that opening heart story is important. When you go first in sharing the real stuff with authenticity and vulnerability, then when it comes time for you to ask the simple question, people will think from the context of their own vulnerability and deeper truths, because they heard that from you, because you went first. But the other thing that we do when we're holding a retreat or an event is we always begin by teaching our rules of engagement. In other words, we're teaching what are the standards for how we want to show up for one another as a community. If you're watching the video version of this on YouTube, I know some of you are listening, you might be watching this on Spotify. You see behind me, there's a big poster that has some of our rules of engagement on it. Things like lead with love, be curious first, critical second, be a learner, not a knower. Remember that God is always fathering us. So I'm walking through and teaching these rules of engagement, these standards for our community. And as I teach them and share about them, I'm telling stories. I'm opening up even more vulnerability, and I'm telling people how to show up. And I think people understand and like understanding what the rules are. Sometimes we think we don't want rules, especially entrepreneurs, right? But the truth is, great and well-defined structures are almost always welcomed. It's poor leadership that we're against. It's maybe that's the reason we became entrepreneurs, so we could escape the poor leadership of working for somebody else. Some of us have experienced that. Others have great bosses, of course, and great people that they work with. But for so many, they're repelled by poor leadership. However, structure and rules and standards feel good when they're well designed and they have integrity. And so I begin every event with that opening heart story. I share vulnerably and honestly, and then I share the standards of how to show up in this community and in this environment with one another. And then after that, I begin asking the questions and facilitating. And the room is set for deep, meaningful conversation, for real breakthrough, for emotion and tears and the real truths to come out in a new way. And so if you're leading events, that's how I recommend doing it. And noting and thinking about not just the content you want to present at the event or the experiences that you want to create, but the questions you want to ask. Considering a few of those questions in advance, preparing them for the facilitation can change everything at your retreats and conferences and events. Now, we do the same thing in group calls. We may not always have an opening heart story. We may not always teach the rules of engagement, but the culture of the community is set because the first clients we had were all taught the rules of engagement. They were all introduced in a way that allowed us to have deep, meaningful connection and breakthrough with one another. Of course, when your business is small and you have 3 clients or 5 clients or 8 clients, you can pour in and build really incredible relationships with those people in a way that you can't at the same level when you've got 50 or 80 or 100 clients or more. And so use that opportunity to set the culture, to establish the rapport, to establish the standard of vulnerability and honesty and truth and deep shares. And then as you add more people into that community and they see how the originals, the people who went first, when they see how those people share and how they connect, they'll follow suit. So one of my favorite calls of the week that we do in our community is our Christian Coaches Academy prayer and networking call on Wednesdays. It's a really beautiful structure. We begin every single Wednesday on that 1-hour call with praise reports, and we just celebrate the goodness of what God is doing. That's really fun. I love that. We move from those praise reports in the opening minutes to announcements, and then we ask 3 questions. And we come up with 3 new questions each week, and we ask those questions, and then we put everybody into breakout rooms because this is a bigger call. But we put people into breakout rooms on Zoom, and they simply answer the 3 questions with each other. And oftentimes the questions are really simple. Sometimes they're more complex, but they're questions that are designed to get people thinking, to get people sharing, and people will get into rooms with somebody that they never met before. And by the vulnerability of their share and answering those questions, they'll develop a friendship. They'll develop trust. And it leads to so much more opportunity. We end up coming back after those breakout rooms and we do prayer requests and we pray for everybody at the end of the call. It's a really wonderful call, but the facilitation of asking those questions is powerful because on that call, I don't teach anything. What's wonderful is it doesn't require a whole lot of preparation. I think of 3 questions, I put them on a slide, and that's it. Other than that, we're just gathering information. We're creating space for people to share. Then we're asking those 3 questions and we're giving people an opportunity to share and have their voice be heard. And the nature of your questions in so many ways becomes the nature of your life. When you start asking people better questions, even simple questions, but with greater emphasis and truth and authenticity and vulnerability and invitation in those questions, Your life will change. Their lives will change. They're going to want more of it. You'll get more referrals. And you'll actually run a business that's easier to run while being more impactful for the people around you. Let's remember, as coaches, trainers, speakers, leaders, however you want to identify yourself in what you're doing in the marketplace right now, content is wonderful. And I love teaching great content. Other people are pure coaches and they love just asking individual questions and what comes up on the spot and helping people find their own answers. I love both sides of that coin. And one of the things I love, regardless of what side of that you're on, is asking 2 or 3 meaningful questions, giving people a chance to journal and an opportunity to share out loud and process the answers to those 2 or 3 important questions. The more we do this, the more success and the more impact we're going to have. Thank you for listening today. By the way, if you want to check out our Christian Coaches Academy, I'd love for you to be a part of it with us. Christian Coaches Academy, we call it CCA, is only $75 a month. It's a month-to-month membership, so you can cancel at any time, but it includes a prayer and networking call every week that I just highlighted. It also includes a quarterly deep dive planning session on Zoom. It includes a directory of over 100 Christian coaches. We do a lot of networking, a lot of what we call coffee chats in that community. And it also has a library of over 25 amazing pre-recorded trainings, exactly step-by-step what you need to build a successful coaching business. It is a wonderful community. The people are just the best. I believe it's the best community that there is for Christian coaches. We also send you our Christian Coaches Playbook in the mail for free, along with usually another gift as well when you join that. If you're interested in finding out more, go to www.f2i, that's the letter F, the number 2, the letter I, f2itribe.com/CCA. f2itribe.com/CCA. You can find all the details. And I'd love to see you join us on our next prayer call. God bless you. Thanks for listening and have a great rest of your week. Cheers.